It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. History captured. The first official photographs of King Charles III are released as he calls the nation's support the greatest possible coronation gift. A working royal family where even the very youngest pitch in as part of volunteering efforts across the country. Millions of others have been giving their time to create a legacy of volunteering, marking the start of the King's reign. But a legal threat against the Met as police express regret that anti-monarchy protesters were arrested ahead of the ceremony. Plus, beating the 8 a.m. scramble, more money for systems to book GP appointments. Blackened buildings in the Ukrainian capital as Moscow launches what Kyiv authorities say are the biggest drone strikes yet. Trump on trial again. Closing arguments begin in the civil rape case against the former president. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in the press preview at 10:30. Hello, a very good evening. Thanks for joining us. King Charles has called the nation's support through the celebrations the greatest possible coronation gift, as the palace released the first official photographs of the newly crowned King and Queen. Charles and Camilla kept a lower profile today, allowing other members of the royal family, including the King's grandchildren, to take centre stage in a huge volunteering effort in honour of the coronation. But one point of controversy from the weekend escalated this evening, with the head of anti-monarchy group arrested on the day, calling for an inquiry into what he called a disgraceful episode, and the Met Police expressing regret. More on that in a moment, but first our royal correspondent Laura Bundock reports.
His first royal engagement put Prince Louis in the driving seat, learning the ropes and stealing the show. The Prince and Princess of Wales brought the whole family to the big help out, with the Scouts here in Slough. Prince George keen to lend a hand, and Charlotte on target with the volunteering message.
The defining theme of the weekend has been service, hasn't it? And we've seen that writ large today with the big help out, and to have had the support of the Prince and Princess of Wales and the rest of the family as well just goes to show that as a family you can get involved in volunteering.
Coronation aside, we've never seen them together at an engagement.
You've got white hair now. You've got white hair now? Oh, my goodness me.
No sign of Grandpa, but the firepower of his wider family out in force. The Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh meeting guide dogs in training. And a Gloucester Cathedral service for the Princess Royal to thank volunteers. The coronation placed the royal family in the spotlight for 3 days, but already questions on what next.
It's generated a range of views and interpretations, and also there is definitely now more a questioning about the monarchy, perhaps, than there has been for decades. A desire for more information about the accountability or not and the transparency or not of the monarchy.
The fences are gone and soon flags will be down as the coronation comes to a close.
Everyone will come away with a different memory from this weekend. We've seen spectacle on a huge scale. The King commanding the military, convening world leaders and celebrities. But is it enough to convince people the monarchy still matters?
And to that, the celebration's short-lived. From official photos, we have a portrait of the working royals. The King says it was a special occasion. Newly crowned, but this week, straight back to work. Laura Bundock, Sky News.
Well, it wasn't just senior royals who were out volunteering. Thousands of people across the country were encouraged to give up some of their time today to lend a hand in their local area. Sky's Becky Johnson has been meeting some of those who turned out to help.
Far from the pageantry, pomp and parties, litter picking in the rain rounded off the coronation for these volunteers at a park near Birmingham.
Oh, you found something.
Gary Norris brought his 3-year-old son Samuel along to help.
I'm a teacher at a local school in Birmingham, and we've been doing a lot of citizenship in lessons. So rather than just telling them that there's something that they could be doing, I wanted to experience it myself and come out and help.
The sparse landscape, the result of a wildfire here in the heat of last summer, likely sparked by sunlight on broken glass. The big help out took place in rather cooler, damper conditions. This is a one-off event for the coronation, but many organisations need volunteers the year round, and they're hopeful that by coming along to this, people will want to offer their services more often. In Leeds, volunteers tended horses at a stables where disabled children and adults can go riding. While in Banbury, a game of Pin the Diamond on the Crown was part of a day of activities to encourage more people to sign up for regular volunteering.
That's a good one. If you've got spare time, please join us, volunteer and do as much as you can for the community.
For some of the elderly people who come here, it's a lifeline from loneliness.
They've taken me out and brought me here, and I've seen all these people and made many friends.
Oh wow,
That is a big bowl.
During a cost of living crisis that's left thousands reliant on voluntary services, even the Prime Minister and his wife got stuck in.
Now this is part of the big help out, tens of thousands of events taking place across the country just like this, respecting and reflecting His Majesty's long tradition of service. And it's community spirit like this that binds our country together.
No royal event would be complete without a bit of planting, so volunteers in Green Park in London were hard at work.
It really builds that sense of community in the UK and really just giving back. And for us, the Royal Parks feels really special to be part of that and really doing our part to get people to give to the environment, which is obviously something that's close to King Charles's heart.
And so it's hoped that the coronation, an event so far removed from everyday life, may have helped bring local communities closer together. Becky Johnson, Sky News.
Meanwhile, anti-monarchy campaigners who were arrested ahead of the King's coronation are considering legal action against the Metropolitan Police. 64 people in total were arrested on Saturday, and so far only 4 charges have been made. 6 others will face no further action. Graham Smith, the chief executive of Republic, called for a full inquiry into the arrests, describing it as a disgraceful episode. Well, tonight the Metropolitan Police have issued a statement saying our activity was targeted at those we believed were intent on taking this action. It was not our intention to prevent protest, and whilst the vast masses of the crowd were there to celebrate and witness a once-in-a-generation event, it is very clear a number of protests took place across the footprint, both before, during and after the event, with no police intervention. Any suggestion all protest was prohibited is not correct. The force added in relation to 6 of the arrests, we regret that those 6 people arrested were unable to join the wider group of protesters in Trafalgar Square and elsewhere on the procession route. Well, away from the coronation, people should be able to book an appointment with their GP more easily as part of a government pledge to improve patient access. Millions of pounds of funding has been announced for this year to help end what the Health Secretary has described as the 8 a.m. scramble for appointments. Changes include introducing online booking tools and upgrading phone systems. But as Sky's health correspondent Ashish Joshi reports, some GPs and pharmacists are questioning whether the plans will make any difference.
We have our clinical pharmacist who works there, our physiotherapist who works there.
Dr. Mehta doesn't normally have the luxury of an empty surgery to show journalists like me around.
It's a really bustling place on a Monday morning.
The government wants to improve patient access to doctors like him. Firstly, by spending over £2 million on new telephone systems to make sure every patient's call is answered.
It's not only about access, it should be about the continuity of care. So as GP practices, we know our populations, we know our patients. We know when they come in and they are more needy than other times. So I think if we just look along access and just providing them with more and more appointments as opposed to providing them with continuous care, we might end up in a bit of trouble.
1,600 patients are registered at this practice, and every morning sees the same chaotic dash for appointments. The practice is closed, but already the phones are going. Normally, you'd have 4 receptionists here fielding calls from hundreds of patients, all trying to make appointments for that day. The government says it wants to move away from this 8 a.m. scramble. The doctors here say the situation every morning is manic. Doctors want the investment, but it doesn't address the workforce crisis that is driving the pressure in primary care.
The numbers of GPs in the UK is dropping. And so, the ultimate real requirement is more GPs to be able to see the numbers of patients that are coming through, especially since demand for general practice services has gone up dramatically in the last 2 years.
The government's primary care plan will also see high street pharmacists taking on more roles, like prescribing medication. And it wants to train GP receptionists to clinically assess calls.
I don't think I'd be very comfortable telling a receptionist my problems. She's not medically trained.
You queue, don't you, for ages on the phone, and then you get through and they say there's no appointments left.
I think they should staff it properly and then pay the staff a proper wage. I think that's the best thing they can do. Everyone's short-staffed, everyone's under pressure, and just throwing a load of cash at it I don't think is the answer.
Investment in technology to give patients better access is welcome, but the challenge is to make sure there are enough GPs like Dr. Mehta to see those patients. Ashish Joshi, Sky News in Redbridge in Essex.
And our chief political correspondent, John Craig, joins us now from Downing Street. So, John, an attempt to get on the front foot from the government, but those terrible local election results will be the main topic of conversation, I'm sure, when Tory MPs return to Westminster tomorrow.
The fight back starts here for Rishi Sunak, a relaunch, you might say. We've already heard one government announcement on health today. We're likely to hear another one tomorrow. But, of course, there'll be plenty of grumbling Tory MPs when MPs return to Westminster tomorrow. The first piece of business, for example, is Treasury questions. Cue calls from Tory right-wingers for tax cuts before the Chancellor wants to introduce them. Then, of course, on Wednesday, meeting of the 1922 committee, backbenchers bound to be a big inquest. And there's a huge row amongst Tory MPs over housing and the Prime Minister's controversial move to scrap housing targets. A lot of Tories think that damaged the Conservatives in the local elections, some of those councils that they lost to Labour and the Liberal Democrats. And then at the weekend, the Boris Johnson fan club, otherwise known as the Conservative Democratic Organisation, they're holding their first conference. They're the ones, many of them, who want to bring back Boris Johnson as Tory leader. Speakers will include Jacob Rees-Mogg and Nadine Dorries. Well, today the Prime Minister remained defiant when he was asked about apologising to Conservative councillors who'd lost their seats on Thursday. He refused to do so.
Will you apologise to the more than 1,000 councillors who lost their seats on Friday?
It's always disappointing to lose hard-working Conservative councillors, and I said that at the time. My job is to deliver for the country. I mean, we've got a big team of people determined to do that. We want to halve inflation, grow the economy, reduce debt, cut waiting lists, and stop the votes. Those are the country's priorities, and me and the government are going to keep working incredibly hard to deliver on those.
Well, the Prime Minister was talking at length there, twice he mentioned it, about his 5-point plan. Of course, getting waiting lists down is one, but of course, up to now, with the strikes in the National Health Service, they've been getting longer, not shorter. Inflation, well, food prices up towards the 20% inflation mark, though they're down to about 15 now. Talk of more interest rate rises, that means mortgages are going to go up again, and still no progress to please, not enough progress to please Tory MPs on the small boats. So a lot of MPs think he needs to broaden his appeal, for example, talk more about crime. That's not one of his 5 priorities. Why not, say some Tory MPs? He just keeps sticking to the script of the 5 pledges, repeating them over and over again. A lot of his colleagues think he needs to do a lot more, and of course those results were dreadful for the Conservatives, although they are relieved that they don't put Mr. Keir Starmer on course for a Commons majority. The fight back, though, very much is on here in Downing Street.
John, thank you. Tomorrow, Russia will mark its Victory Day, a celebration of its success in World War II. President Putin may have wanted to secure Bakhmut ahead of the celebration, but Ukraine's stubborn defence of the city has robbed him of that achievement. And as the war rages on, Ukrainian officials were forced to issue an air alert across the entire country this morning after drone strikes the Ukrainian government called the biggest yet. Military analyst Sean Bell has more.
Victory Day parades are normally a massive event in the Russian calendar, not only in Red Square, but across the whole of the country. But Russia's lost a lot of the military equipment in this last year. It's also ceded 50% of the territory in Ukraine that it once had. And as a result, it's cancelled many of its parades across the main country. In addition, the Immortal Regiments, which are relatives of families that have lost loved ones in the Second World War, in the conflict, often march as part of the parade with pictures of their loved ones. In fact, President Putin led this part of the display of the parade last year with a picture of his father in military uniform. This imagery is from last year. But the concern is that actually this parade, if it was run this year, would attract all those families who've lost loved ones in the Ukraine war, and that would expose the full extent of Russia's losses, and therefore this element of the parade has been cancelled. If we look more widely, though, the last 10 days has seen a massive increase in the number of Russian attacks across the country, across Ukraine, particularly the last 24 hours, where Kharkiv, Kherson, Mykolaiv and Odessa and Kyiv have all been heavily targeted. Over the last 24 hours, attacks include 35 Shahed 136 drones. Those are the drones that Russia's importing from Iran. And although the Ukraine is becoming increasingly adept at shooting these down, as can be seen from this footage over Kyiv, the worry is that inevitably some of the wreckage falls on the city and can cause some damage on the ground. Mayor Klitschko has said that at least 5 civilians were injured. A lot of the damage is to residential buildings. Very difficult to see these as military targets. But also the Russians have fired at least 16 missiles and 61 airstrikes. So it's well over 100 strikes in the last 24 hours, including targeting Odessa, a food warehouse there. And there have been air raid sirens going across the whole country. So it's clear that Ukraine is expecting more of these attacks to come. And if we look at Bakhmut, we've been talking about Bakhmut for the last 11 months. Russia now owns 90% of the city, but has still failed to deliver success in times ready for the Victory Day celebration. But the question is, why are both sides fighting in Bakhmut? Ukraine always claimed that actually, if they can force the Russians into offence, generally forces lose 3 times as many soldiers in offence as they do defence. Russia's inexperienced. They've actually been losing about 7-1. As a result, Ukraine has felt that if we don't fight them here, where are we going to fight them? And at least we can attrit more of the Russians here. But only this week, Yevgeny Prigozhin, the boss of the Wagner Group, has also said that's exactly what Russia's tactics have been for the last few months, trying to grind down Ukrainian forces. The tragedy here is both sides are fighting over what is not a strategically important city. Both sides trying to maximise the casualties they inflict on each other. What a dreadful horror of war. How on earth you rationalise the huge loss of life, and for what?
A man accused of killing 8 people, including 3 children, after driving a vehicle into a group near a homeless and migrant shelter in Texas has been charged with 8 counts of manslaughter. 18 people were also injured in Brownsville in Texas when a Land Rover hit a group waiting at a bus stop across the street. The man is expected to face further charges later today. Back here, a former Ofsted inspector has criticised the way in which the watchdog rates schools, telling Sky News that reducing their performance to a single-word judgment is nonsense. The debate over the inspection's impact was prompted by the death of head teacher Ruth Perry, who took her own life in January after Ofsted downgraded her school from outstanding to inadequate. Calls for reform of the sector are now growing, as Sky's Ivor Bennett reports.
I cannot be silent through the tears that keep on coming. The dam has been broken. There's no going back.
They are alarming insights into the lives of head teachers and the devastating impact an Ofsted inspection can have.
The sleepless nights, the endless crying, the feeling of being a failure.
The suicide of school leader Ruth Perry triggering painful memories for many.
and he was really struggling.
Simon Kidwell's school in Cheshire was inspected last month, his 8th one as a head teacher, yet it still triggered his insomnia.
I think it's the intensity of the process. I think it's the adrenaline because it's very, very high stakes. I think if I was to get an adequate judgment, I'd be absolutely bereft, and I don't know if I could continue in education.
Ruth Perry's family say she felt the same way. The head teacher took her own life in January after an inspection that would downgrade her school in Reading from outstanding to inadequate. But this tragedy is by no means an isolated case. In the last 25 years, there have been at least 10 teachers who have taken their own life where the stress of an Ofsted inspection has been cited in the coroner's report as a factor. And for many in the sector, the fear is there will be more if nothing changes. So far, Ofsted's resisted calls to scrap the single-word judgments, but those calls for reform are only getting louder.
Reducing it to one single grade is nonsense. I mean, there's ample research out there when we used to go and grade lessons that you may as well just toss a coin in terms of getting it accurate. Hello, yes, Andrew here from...
Andrew Morrish quit as an Ofsted inspector in 2015. He claims teams would go into schools with their minds made up already and would change evidence to fit their predetermined rating.
I can think of a number of times a conversation's been had with me that, you know, you might want to go and rethink what you put in that evidence form. That doesn't reconcile with what your other colleagues are seeing, and that's not particularly helpful in terms of us trying to get through to the overall final grade. So I felt, you know, very uncomfortable with that.
In a statement, Ofsted said, "Our inspections are first and foremost for children and their parents. We always want inspections to be constructive and collaborative, and in the vast majority of cases, school leaders agree that they are." But many clearly feel this is a fatal lesson that hasn't been learned. Ivor Bennett, Sky News, Cheshire.
A court in New York has heard closing arguments in a civil lawsuit accusing Donald Trump of rape and defamation. The former president denies the claims, which have been brought by former Elle magazine advice columnist E. Jean Carroll. Well, let's get more on this. We can speak to our US correspondent James Matthews in Washington. James, what's been said?
What's been said by the attorneys for E. Jean Carroll, Donald Trump's accuser, is that she has presented credible, consistent and powerful evidence around an incident she says took place in 1996. She says that she met Donald Trump outside a department store in New York. They ended up inside. He had asked her for advice in buying a gift for a woman. They were in the lingerie department. They went into a dressing room, and it's inside there that she says she was raped by Donald Trump. He dismisses it, points to the fact that she made these revelations many years after the alleged incident took place. He says she was trying simply to sell a book, calls her a hoax, said that these are false accusations against a rich guy. In the closing arguments by her attorney, she presented video evidence, the video deposition of Donald Trump. He didn't give evidence in court in person, but he was asked questions on video. Now, this is a man who said he'd never met his accuser and that in any case, she wasn't his type. The attorney for E. Jean Carroll said, well, look at the video. Here's a photograph that has Donald Trump in the same frame as E. Jean Carroll. And when presented with this photograph on video, Donald Trump confuses his accuser with his second wife, Marla Maples. According to the attorney for E. Jean Carroll, that shows that she was very much his type. Look at the video.
You say Marla's in this photo?
That's Marla, yeah. That's my wife.
Which woman are you pointing to? No,
Here.
Carol.
Oh, is that?
The person you just pointed to was E. Jean Carroll.
Who is that? Who is this?
Point, your wife. And the woman on the right is your then wife,
I don't know.
Ivana?
This was the picture. I assume that's John Johnson. Is that
That's Carol?
Because it's very blurry.
There you go. The jury is due to be sent out in this case tomorrow. It's very important for all concerned, not least the woman at the centre of it, E. Jean Carroll. Significant for Donald Trump. Bear in mind, he's already facing charges in connection with hush money payments to a porn star. He's also facing criminal investigations into other matters related to the mishandling of classified documents and into events surrounding the January the 6th insurrection. If a jury finds in favour of his accuser and he's successfully sued, that would cost him a lot of money. It would be also a hefty addition to the legal burden that he carries.
James in Washington, thank you. Rescuers in southern India have been searching for survivors after an overcrowded tourist boat sank in an estuary in the state of Kerala. Around 40 people, including children, are thought to have been on the boat. Police are looking for the vessel's owner and have charged him with homicide. Sky's Neville Lazarus reports.
A late-night boat tragedy has taken the lives of several people, including women and children. The vessel, with at least 30 passengers on board, most on their summer holidays, capsized in the coastal town of Thanur in the southern state of Kerala. One family lost 11 members in the accident. Some of the survivors are in critical condition in hospital. The incident happened late on Sunday, and with nightfall, rescue operations were a challenge. The vessel has been pulled ashore, and Indian Coast Guards and the National Disaster Relief Force were engaged in looking for those still missing and retrieving bodies from the muddy waters. Many are believed to be trapped inside when the boat overturned. An inquiry has been set up to investigate the cause of the disaster. As the state government announced a day of mourning and compensation to the next of kin, anxious relatives gather at the hospital, awaiting news of their loved ones. Neville Lazarus, Sky News, India.